It's a clash of titans as the legendary Judit Polgar with the white pieces takes on the super solid Michael Adams. This game starts quietly but explodes into a tactical masterpiece. We open with a Petrov defense. Both sides develop symmetrically, a solid and well-respected opening. A quiet, balanced position emerges on the board. The pieces continue to fly onto the board. Polgar castles and starts to expand in the center with pawns to d4 and c4, putting the first real questions to black. Adams challenges white's bishop, and after a brief dance, the queens are traded off the board. The central tension resolves and we head into a complex endgame, and right here, Judit Polgar uncorks a brilliant move, knight to c3. This is a fantastic pawn sacrifice, giving up her pawn structure to seize the initiative and open lines for her pieces. Adams accepts the challenge, of course. Knight takes the knight on c3. And this is the entire point. The pawn takes back on c3. It's the only move, and it's a great one, ripping open the b-file for her rook. That is long-term pressure. Black's knight hops to a5 to get out of the way, and both players now reposition. Polgar brings her rooks to the key files, getting ready for the next phase of the battle. Polgar has built up some nice pressure, but right here, she misses the most clinical path forward. The best move was queen to d3, putting the question to the bishop. After bishop to f5, the queen swings to b5. Pawn to c6 forces the issue, and queen takes the queen on d5, winning it outright. But instead of that, Polgar plays bishop to e3, and this slip gives Michael Adams the chance to seize the initiative. And Adams pounces immediately. The knight jumps into c4, a fantastic square, taking full advantage. But look at this. In a tough spot, Polgar finds another brilliant move. Knight to d2. A second sacrifice just to disrupt Black's coordination and keep the fight alive. Absolutely incredible. Adams takes the bait, snapping off the bishop on e3. And again, the follow-up is perfect. Pawn takes the knight on e3. This is the only move, opening the f-file for her rook and creating fantastic counterplay. What a fight! The game is now razor-sharp. Black's queen becomes a menace on g5, while Polgar pushes her e-pawn forward, creating chaos in the center. Every move is critical, and here, with the tension at its peak, Polgar makes a small slip. The engine prefers queen to e2. After pawn to b5, the knight drops back to e3, pawn to c6 defends, and a quiet pawn to g3 keeps things under control, but in the game she plays queen to c2, and this allows Black to really ramp up the pressure. Adams immediately brings more firepower, lifting his rook to e6, ready to swing into the attack, and pawn to g3 is another inaccuracy from Polgar. It feels like a necessary move, but it just creates more targets around her king, and Black's advantage grows. And just as predicted, here comes pawn to b5. This kicks the white knight, which is forced to retreat all the way back to b2. Now it's Adams' turn to miss a beat. He's built up a winning position, but he doesn't find the killer blow. The strongest move was rook to f6, preparing to swing over to the king side. After queen to f2, bishop to d2 is still strong. Pawn to h4 tries to distract, but queen to h6 seals the deal. Back in the game, though, he plays bishop to d2 immediately, and this lets Polgar back into the game just a little. The position explodes. Black checks on e3, white's king steps to g2, and now Adams challenges the center with pawn to f5. Polgar responds with a threat of her own, h4. And in this incredibly complex position, Adams makes a crucial error that throws away his advantage. The correct move was queen to g6, keeping the pressure on. After rook takes bishop on e3, pawn takes pawn on e4, bishop takes the pawn on e4, and bishop to c6, Black is still much better. But instead he plays queen to h6, and suddenly the game is completely equal again. Polgar has fought her way back. Polgar wastes no time. She captures on f5, and after Black's rook moves, she delivers a nasty check with her queen on b3, and under fire, Adams finds the only move. King to h8 is a fantastic defensive resource, stepping out of all the immediate danger. The point is, after a move like knight to d3, Black can play rook takes pawn on f5. Rook to f1 tries to create threats, but bishop to e6 holds everything together, and Black is fine. Polgar repositions her queen to d5, Adams recaptures the pawn on f5, and white doubles rooks on the e-file, keeping the pressure on. The position is balanced on a knife's edge, and right here, Adams makes a decisive mistake. He had to play pawn to a6 to control the queenside. Then, after pawn to a4, bishop to g6, and the pawns trade on b5, the position is still roughly equal. But in the game, he plays rook to e6, and this allows white's knight to reroute and seize a winning advantage, and Polgar is clinical. Knight to d1 is the first step, heading for a better square. Black's rook shifts to d6, but the damage is done. Queen to e5. It's an inaccuracy, not the most precise move, but white is still completely winning. She had a cleaner path, but the advantage is enormous. Black brings the bishop to d2, trying to hold the position together. And then a shocking blunder. Rook to f1. Polgar, from a completely winning position, throws it all away in a single move. The game is now dead, even. Unbelievable. Adams brings his rook to f6 to challenge, and Polgar shifts her own rook to f2. The game has been completely reset, and now, in this roller coaster of a game, we get the final decisive blunder. Adams makes a catastrophic error. He had a simple, safe move with bishop to c1. After queen takes pawn on b5, bishop takes pawn on a3, knight to e3, and bishop to d6, the game is just equal. But instead of that quiet move, he plays queen to g5, and that just hangs the queen to a simple pawn capture. The game is over. But wait, Polgar misses it. Perhaps in total shock, she doesn't take the free queen. She plays pawn to d5 instead. It's still a completely winning move, but not the instant kill. Under unbearable pressure, Adams moves his queen to f4, and incredibly, this hangs the queen to a pawn capture for a second time. And Polgar again doesn't take with the pawn. She plays queen takes queen on f4. This trades queens and still leads to an easily winning endgame, but what a strange sequence, and now a mistake from black. King to g8. He had to recapture the queen on f4 with his bishop to put up any kind of fight. Now, white's win is trivial again. What is happening in this game? Polgar, with a simple win on the board, blunders again. The game ends instantly with queen takes the bishop on d2. After rook to f7, king to g1 is safe. Bishop to c8 and bishop to g2 just consolidates a winning material advantage. But in this chaotic sequence, she pushes the pawn to c4, and this gives black one last miraculous chance to save the game. But Adams misses it. This was the moment for black to save the game, but he makes the final blunder. He had to play bishop takes the queen on f4. After pawn takes the bishop back, bishop to d3, rook to e6, and rook takes pawn on f4, black is back in the game, winning a rook. But he missed his chance. He plays bishop to d7, and that's it. The win is back in Polgar's hands for good. Pawn to h5 from Polgar. It's yet another mistake in this wild endgame, as she continues to miss the simple win, but her position is so overwhelming it doesn't matter. And one last gasp from Adams with pawn to c5, but this is a blunder that seals his fate. He still had to try. Bishop takes the queen on f4, pawn takes bishop, rook takes the pawn on f4, knight to e3, and pawn takes pawn on c4, and black is still fighting, winning a rook. But it wasn't to be. After pawn to c5, there are no more tricks, and white's path to victory is now clear. Polgar captures the pawn on c6. It's not the computer's top choice, but it's more than enough to wrap things up. Black plays bishop to e8, but the position is completely hopeless. White has overwhelming threats, and Adams has seen enough, and Michael Adams resigns. After one of the wildest, most error-filled endgames you will ever see at the top level, Judit Polgar takes the win. Black is down a queen with no hope. Here's what he saw. The bishop gives a check on d5. The king is forced to h8. Queen takes the bishop on d2. Bishop takes pawn on h5 is irrelevant because rook takes the rook on f6, and white is simply up a crushing amount of material.